My name is Tanya. I'm standing in the corridor of Rosewood General Hospital, Julian's hand in mine, feeling lighter than I have in years. Just minutes ago, Veronica, the mother of my ex-husband Ethan, was here, looking like she'd seen a ghost. Her face was as white as a sheet, and her composure had completely cracked. It all started when I was making my usual rounds on a Tuesday afternoon. The fluorescent lights above me hummed softly, and my white coat swished against my scrubs as I walked, a tablet of patient charts tucked under my arm. This was just another workday, like all the Tuesdays since my divorce from Ethan. I'd rebuilt my life from scratch in the past 12 months, and most days, I didn't even think about him. Then, I turned the corner near the cardiology waiting area and saw her. Veronica was sitting in a vinyl chair, her purse clutched tightly in her lap like a shield. The moment her eyes landed on me, her whole demeanor changed. She stood up slowly, smoothing her elegant suit, and that familiar, malicious smile spread across her face. It was the same smile she'd used at family dinners to say hurtful things. I hadn't seen her since the day I moved out of the house Ethan and I had shared on Elm Street. A year hadn't softened her one bit. "Tanya," she drawled, savoring my name. "Well, what a surprise. Still playing doctor, I see?" I kept my expression neutral, just like when a patient's family member tries to pick a fight. "Veronica, I didn't know you came to this hospital." "My sister's having a procedure," she said dismissively, waving her hand as if the real reason she was there was less important than the conversation she was about to start. She stepped closer, and I caught the scent of the same expensive perfume she'd worn for the 15 years I'd known her. It was sharp, floral, and suffocating. "But running into you like this feels like fate," she continued. "I've been wanting to tell you something for a long time." I didn't ask what. I knew she didn't need an invitation. "Leaving you was the best decision my son ever made," she said, her voice pitched just right for the people in the waiting room to hear, but soft enough to pretend it was private. "Now he has a baby boy with your best friend, Lily." Hearing this, I thought about Lily. We'd been roommates in college, and she'd been a bridesmaid at my wedding. The calls had stopped coming about 6 months before my marriage ended, and I'd never understood why until now. But standing there in my white coat, with the chart still under my arm, I didn't feel what Veronica expected. "Is that what you believe?" I asked calmly. Something in my tone made her smile falter slightly. She tried to regain her composure. "You should know what you lost. A grandson, a real family, everything you couldn't give him." I didn't answer right away. I glanced at the clock on the wall, then back at her. I saw the lines around her mouth deepen as she was pleased with herself. Patients shuffled past in wheelchairs, and a nurse called a name over the intercom. Life went on around us, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her, for all the energy she'd wasted trying to break me. "You should get back to your sister," I said finally, stepping to the side to pass her. Just then, the door at the end of the corridor opened. A man walked through it, tall and dressed in a sharp charcoal suit. He carried himself with a quiet authority that made the nurses at the station straighten up without even realizing it. He scanned the hallway and then his eyes found mine. His face softened in a way that had nothing to do with hospital protocol. "Tanya," he said, walking towards me in a few easy strides. Veronica's head snapped towards him, and I watched as recognition dawned on her face. The color drained from her face, and her mouth opened, but no words came out. Julian reached me first. His hand found the small of my back in a gesture so natural it was almost second nature. "Sorry I'm late," he said, glancing at his watch. The board meeting ran long. Dr. Thompson wouldn't stop talking about the new wing. "You're fine," I said, and I must have sounded more than I intended because his eyes flicked towards Veronica, taking in her frozen expression and the purse still clutched to her chest. "Mrs. Reed," he said politely but formally. "I didn't expect to see you here." Veronica's mouth opened and closed twice before she managed to say, "Julian." The name sounded foreign on her lips, like she was testing if it was real. You two know each other? We're getting married in the spring, I said simply. I watched as the news hit her like a slow-moving wave. She was trying to reconcile the image she'd had of me divorced, alone, and discarded with the reality in front of her. But that wasn't what made her face turn completely white. A few seconds later, Julian turned to me and said, I meant to call you earlier. The audit on Reed Enterprises came back this morning. We found enough discrepancies in the quarterly filings to bring it to the full board tonight. I felt Veronica go rigid beside me. Reed Enterprises? You're talking about my husband's company. Ethan's company, she said, her voice thin. Julian glanced at her and realized the conversation had become very personal. I run capital allocation for the firm that holds the majority stake, he said carefully. We've had concerns about the books for months. This morning, we confirmed there's been money moved out of client accounts that shouldn't have been touched. Ethan's name is attached to most of the transfers. The waiting room seemed to go quiet, though I knew it wasn't really. All I could hear was Veronica's sharp, uneven breathing. She was watching her son's life fall apart in real time, delivered in Julian's calm, unhurried voice. That's not possible, she said, but there was no conviction in her words. Ethan wouldn't. He's always been careful with money. I'm sorry, Julian said sincerely. There's a meeting tonight to decide what happens next. I'd imagine he'll be hearing from legal before the day's over. I thought about Lily then, and the happy family Veronica had described so gleefully just minutes ago. I wondered if Lily knew yet, and how long their happiness would last once the accounts were frozen. The lawyers started calling, and the company that funded their lifestyle crumbled under Ethan's secrets. I should go, Veronica said abruptly. Her face was still pale, and her composure was completely shattered. She turned without saying goodbye and walked quickly towards the elevators, her heels clicking unevenly on the tile. I didn't feel triumphant watching her go. It surprised me more than anything that had happened in the last 10 minutes. I'd spent so long imagining what it would be like to see her humbled, but now that it had happened, all I felt was a quiet, settled peace. I realized I no longer needed her downfall to feel whole. Are you okay? Julian asked, turning to face me fully and taking my hand. I am, I said, and for the first time in a long time, I truly meant it. A year ago, I'd stood in a courtroom signing papers that ended a marriage I thought would last forever. I'd wondered if I'd ever feel steady again. I hadn't expected the answer to come in a hospital hallway, from a woman who'd spent 15 years thinking I was a disappointment in her son's life. But there it was, right in front of me, in the form of everything I'd rebuilt without even realizing it. Ethan's mother had wanted me to feel small that day, but instead, I walked out of that hospital corridor with Julian's hand in mine, finally understanding that the best revenge isn't planned. It just happens when you keep living your life with your head held high while others assume you'll fall apart. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever had someone try to make you feel small for a life you didn't choose, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button before you go. I share these stories every week, real moments of betrayal, resilience, and the kind of justice that arrives when you least expect it. I'd love to have you along for the next one. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.